Sushant Sareen on that. Sushant Sareen, the fact is that, by and large, as far as our polity is concerned, at least perhaps no one would be speaking out, in any way supporting LTT. Of course, we have the stray voices such as Vaiko, etc., who even tried to implicate themselves before that tribunal. But the larger question is that while we may have this political unanimity, at the end of the day, if you have, Sri Lankan drug mafia, Pakistan drug mafia, and LTT all in collusion in this manner, that is very, very serious from India's perspective. And of course, once again, Pakistan appearing to fish in troubled waters.
Look, I'm not so sure whether it's the government of Pakistan or this is a private sector venture between drug smugglers and the LTTE smuggling networks. And LTTE had a pretty strong smuggling network at one point of time. And it is quite possible that, because look, remember one thing, that the government of Pakistan, at least, and the Pakistani military has tried to cultivate very, very close relations with the Sri Lankan government. And then tried to use those close relations to insert their own Lashkar and other terrorist groups and try and infiltrate into India from down south. But I think the drug networks would probably be working somewhat autonomously. I wouldn't entirely put it on the ISI to be running those networks. I could be wrong, but that is one part of it. I think the other part of it is that I think it's good that we are showing abundant caution. As of now, the LTT threat is not a very big one. But I think we are seeing some green shoots of the LTT starting to operate once again. We also see some traction that the LTT is receiving, not directly but indirectly in Tamil Nadu. Fringe groups, Mr. Vaiko can be called fringe, he can be called not so fringe. But even within the DMK, for example, there are very sympathetic voices for what the LTT stood for. So you cannot afford to ignore the green shoots which are coming out, and you have to quell them. Now, you need some legal framework to be able to do this. If you lift the ban on the LTTE and its affiliated groups, then you have no legal framework on the basis of which you are going to crack down on them. So I think it is an imperative for the security agencies to get that legal cover, that if it's a banned organization, they can, start taking the necessary action to crush this menace before it becomes bigger than what it should be. So that's the second part of it. The third part of it is that Smriti is right. She's actually the expert on Sri Lanka, and she's been looking at it very closely. But she's absolutely right. LTT has, since 2009, when it was decimated, the organization was gone, the leadership was wiped out, but the ideology and the driving force behind the ideology remained. And the Sri Lankan government did not really do what needed to be done to ensure that reconciliation takes place, reintegration into the national mainstream takes place. So the majority community in Sri Lanka remained kind of aloof from this whole issue. They remained, in fact, hostile to the idea of giving anything more than, what was normal stuff to the Tamil population. So that problem has continued to persist.
Okay.
And that gives some kind of wind for some kind of revival of LTT or similar organizations, which I think we have burnt our fingers, and we should make sure that this kind of a thing does not grow.
Right.
And if the government is mindful of it, it is not complacent like we have been in Punjab, where we've allowed the menace to grow. At least in Tamil Nadu, we are taking preemptive steps and ensuring that this menace remains under the jackboot of the Indian state. It does not grow bigger than what it should be.
All right, lessons from Punjab, therefore Tamil Nadu is what Sushant is saying. But Dr. Smriti Patnaik, if I can come in on this, there's also been a change of regime there in Sri Lanka. How certain or how much do we know in terms of the new regime and in terms of their actions as far as cracking down on LTT is concerned? What can we expect in coming days?
See, I completely agree with Sushant. The LTT may be banned. You can ban the organization, but you really cannot ban the ideology. It stood for certain things. It stood for the Tamil political rights, which has been systematically denied by the Sri Lankan government historically. But having said that, the devolution, the 87 Indo-Lanka Accord, which provided a kind of devolution to the northern province, that actually, since I think, the last election when Vigneswaran was the chief minister of Northern Province, the election has not taken place, the provincial elections in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka also had seen certain instability, political instability for quite some time. The new government, very interestingly, has received a lot of vote from the northern part of Sri Lanka. In fact, this is the first time where the Tamil politicians have not done well as far as the Sri Lankan parliamentary election is concerned. Even for the presidential election, they also had their own candidate. Obviously, it was very much known that he will not be able to get elected given the population size and all. But the Tamil themselves have been also extremely divided over the issue of devolution, what kind of devolution should be there, the constitutional reform process, because there is this referendum thing in Sri Lankan constitution where even if you have a kind of, devolution proposed by the government, it has to go through a referendum.
Right.
And we all know in a majoritarian country how to get the referendum passed. But the current government appears to be sympathetic to provide devolution or political rights to the Tamil population. But we're not yet very sure. They have a very comfortable majority. But then again, the opposition from the Sinhala Buddhist will come. At one point of time, the JBP was very much against any kind of devolution to the LTT. They, in fact, had quite a few demonstrations and continued to demonstrate
Okay.
whenever there is this, in June, when the accord was signed.
All right,
So
all right.
therefore,
Dr. Patak, I have to come in there. I'd like to thank you as well as Sushant Sareen and Major General A.K. Siwaj for joining us and breaking this down for our viewers. Of course, certainly very, very chilling report there coming out of